Okay, we are live. Thanks everyone for joining. Apologies for our late start, but I'm here with a group of incredible activists to talk about the movement to end the sales tax on tampons across the United States. I'll introduce myself and then I'll let each of you introduce yourselves. I am a campaigner at change.org, and I've had the pleasure of supporting some of these incredible women who are campaigning against this tax. I work a lot on women's rights issues, and I'm just so thrilled to be here. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Weiss-Wolf. I am a writer and an advocate, an activist for menstrual equity, and I'm here in New York City right now.
I'll let Rachel and Helen, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hi, my name's Rachel. And my name's Helen. And we are 19-year-old identical twins and activists and students who attend UCLA.
And then Danielle, I'll let you go next.
Hi, I'm Danielle McNally. I'm a senior editor at Cosmopolitan Magazine. I handle all of our health coverage and a lot of our social justice coverage. And so I have covered the menstrual equity issue and helped Jen launch our Change.org petition last year.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So let's jump right into questions. Jennifer, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to start this campaign and, what it's been like watching it turn into a national movement.
Sure, happy to. So for me, the story began almost 2 years ago. It was actually New Year's Day on 2015. And I had learned on that day about a drive that some teenagers in my community were doing to collect tampons and pads for our local food pantry. And upon hearing their story and what they were doing, I became almost immediately consumed with the idea of what it means, especially for low-income people in this country, to manage menstruation and how that could actually impinge upon their ability to just, be productive members, citizens of society. So from that point on, I think this light bulb went off about what it would take to launch a policy movement and an activist base in this country around the idea of economics of menstruation in particular. So I was, I started writing and I started doing as much outreach as I could to really help elevate the dialogue. I mean, one of the challenges I think menstruation as a policy issue isn't just that it's charting new territory or it's policies that we haven't really ever explored in this country, but it's also elevating and opening up a dialogue around menstruation, something that has been, anything from stigmatized to taboo to just kind of not really talked about. So I was aware as the year went on that the tampon tax in particular was a fight that was being waged around the world. In July of 2015, in fact, Canada eliminated its national tax on menstrual products. And there had been petitions, including on change.org, in the UK, in Australia, in many other parts of the world. So it just seemed to me that if the time was ripe to elevate a policy campaign around menstruation and the economics and equity of menstruation, the tampon tax was a good place to start. Again, sort of the path was being forged elsewhere, and we hadn't really started the dialogue here in the United States. So by the summertime, after having written a bunch of op-eds and connected with many legislators at the municipal, state, and federal level around the country on the issue more broadly, I decided that launching a national petition to address the tampon tax was probably the best way to go. I mean, the sales tax question is different than Canada or the UK or Australia in that we weren't talking about a national tax. We were talking about a fight that was going to have to be waged state by state by state. And in this country at that time, 40 of the 50 United States continued to tax menstrual products. There were 5 that had explicitly created exemptions for them and 5 that just didn't have sales tax at all. But other than that, the other 40 were continuing, without too much attention being drawn to it, to collect sales tax on tampons and pads and menstrual products. But it seemed to me that to petition and use this platform well, doing so as a national argument was what needed to happen. It couldn't be that we just went to New York, we just went to California, or we just went to Illinois, because there might not be enough pressure or public sentiment or outrage, quite frankly, to drive our legislators to act. So the petition was a little bit delicate because it wasn't geared at any one particular legislator or one particular legislature or one particular governor. We decided to go for all 40 in this very broad way to elevate the national dialogue around the issue. So I had the amazing fortune of meeting Danielle in August of 2015. Cosmo was preparing a major story and feature in its, I think, November issue at the time when we talked in August. There it is, about menstruation and, you know, all kinds of aspects and elements and talking points about menstruation. But they were also going to focus on the plight of low-income people in particular and, you know, potential policy agenda items. So we got to talking, and I shared the idea of the petition, and Danielle was just like this force that made it happen. Of that call, it was like an incredible moment to realize that the Cosmopolitan and its enormous readership and following was going to join forces on this petition. And, you know, I thought we really had a chance of doing exactly what I had hoped for with it, which was to elevate a national dialogue. So the petition went live, I think, just maybe tomorrow. I think it was October 15th, but it's just about a year ago today. We put the petition up, and it, you know, and it got off to a fast start. People were eager to sign it, eager to talk about it, but and was what we hoped would happen, which was I started hearing from state legislators that they were interested in introducing bills in the coming legislative session starting in January 2016. So that sort of brought us to, I guess, year 2 of this campaign, which folks may feel like they've heard about the tampon tax here and there, but what they should know is that since the petition was launched, 15 states of the 40 that exempt menstrual products, 15 introduced legislation or debated it on their legislature floor, and 3 actually got it done this year: New York, Illinois, and Connecticut.
That's fantastic. That's really great. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Danielle, I'd love if you could jump in here and tell us a little bit about what it was like as a publication to be working with Jennifer.
All right. Yeah, there we go. Can you hear me? Yeah. It was so great to work with Jennifer because she really is so passionate about this topic, and she was able to really dedicate all of her focus to that, because for us, we were doing the story, as Jen mentioned, which is, it was called Surf the New Wave, Cosmo's Guide to the Modern Period. And it was a lot about, you know, just how women can handle their period to make themselves more comfortable. And we talked a lot about flow, and we talked a lot about, you know, pain solutions. And there was a big piece in there about, you know, why hasn't there been more research to help women deal with their period. So a lot of the other menstrual activity topics that other women in this fight are fighting. One of the things that was interesting as we were sort of getting towards the wrap-up phase of the piece, we had a Q&A page as part of it that was just sort of like all the crazy, you know, questions that you might have about your period. And my boss said, well, where can, you know, low-income women go to get menstrual products for free? I think that's what a lot of low-income women would ask that question. And I thought it was going to be a really easy answer. I thought I was going to run back to my computer and do a little bit of Googling and find like, oh, this nonprofit donates menstrual products to homeless and low-income women. And lo and behold, there was no sort of big national place for that. And what I learned from that was that there weren't really these products even available at shelters and such, or at Planned Parenthood or the like. And in that research, I found an article where Jen was quoted talking about the work she was doing with Councilwoman Ferreras about the school policy. And she and I got to talking, and she said, you know, what's interesting is all these financial issues too. They can't, you know, use their food stamps, they can't use their FSA, and they're taxed in 40 of the 50 states. And I guess I'd never paid attention to that on my receipt when I was buying them, but I thought that was pretty crazy. And that seemed like a place, as Jen said, that you could start the fight and the entry into it might be a little simpler. And that really affects all women, regardless of, you know, where they live, their income. Well, I guess if you live in those 10 states, it doesn't affect you, but your income level, this and that. And so we wanted to have a call to action for our girls to say, you know, you've just read these 12 pages, and if you're as outraged as we are, you can do something about it. Sign this petition. Let's get people talking. So we loved Jen's idea. We were very happy to lend our name to it and to encourage, you know, the 32 million readers we have to be aware of it, and really just to get the conversation started. And I think that's, as journalists, you know, what we can do best is just to make people aware of this. And, you know, hopefully they read it, and then they're at the bar with their friends and they're like, oh my God, I read this article in Cosmopolitan. Did you know that our tampons are taxed? That's crazy. And then that person tells their friend, and so on and so forth. So it seems like it worked.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's such an exciting and interesting piece of this campaign that is a little bit unique for some of the campaigns that we see on change.org. Rachel and Helen, could one of you talk a little bit about your petition, which works on a much more local level, and how you, in some ways, though I don't know if you actually read that article, you were one of those young women who found out that tampons were taxed and decided that you wanted to do something about it.
Absolutely. We're really excited to be here. And, you know, as 18-year-olds, when we first conceived of the idea of, you know, and finding out about the tax, we were actually incoming first years trying to shop for our necessities. And being college students, we're kind of strapped on resources. So we were looking through our receipts, and we were trying to figure out where and why we were being hit the hardest financially. And, you know, and that's when we found out firsthand that on our receipts, there was a sales tax on tampons and pads. And we were like, we knew the tax code beforehand that necessities in California are not taxed. And we got thinking, and we started talking about it. Why are something that we really deem as necessities being taxed, and why are we being unfairly charged for something that we desperately need? We hit the road running in the Target parking lot, brainstorming as to what the best way to approach this issue was. And we decided that, of course, the sales tax policy in the United States, as Jennifer mentioned, it isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Each state does their own thing. So we decided that now close to 2 years ago, right? Yeah, now close to 2 years ago, we decided that we were going to petition our governor and the Board of Equalization about what we can do in California. And, you know, we actually started as traditional petition collectors. So we went out and bothered all the people in public spaces and public parks, libraries, and, you know, anywhere else we could think of to try to gather people to hand sign our paper petitions. And that's when we thought of moving to change.org. And doing so helped us gave us the online petition system to try to reach out to the most people we can. And honestly, the outreach has been enormous. It's been amazing. It's so much more than what we could have done going door to door, place to place. And social media is such a phenomenal place, especially for this new generation, to really link out and touch base on what they care most about. Right, and we're really passionate about thinking up of ideas and speaking out for things that we believe are unjust and things that we really need to be changed. So our background. Right, so our background, it's really serendipitous if you think about it, that we actually grew up as immigrants. We immigrated from Korea when we were 5, and to think that we grew up in downtown LA and we grew up socioeconomic background. There were times when my dad owned a store, and Rachel and I would spend hours and hours behind that counter, and we would sit on cardboard boxes and plastic crates. And thinking back to those times, I realized that it is very easy to empathize when you come from a background like that to know that there might have been a time when you couldn't, as a young woman, afford necessities like that. And yeah, in thinking of those times, we sought out the power of innovation to take us from that world to somewhere that we felt like we can change certain issues that we felt were unfair. So using that spirit, we invent as well as we are social activists, and we try to champion for causes that we feel matter to all of us.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've been doing some really incredible work and using all sorts of tools, which I think is so fascinating. Jennifer, you have used a tool here at change.org that is a sort of a newer tool for us. You have a movement page of local petitions and your petition aiming to end the tampon tax across the country. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done with local groups to be targeting this tax at a state level?
Yeah, that's you know, and that's kind of the amazing thing about this platform is the opportunity to communicate and connect with so many people. And for what it's worth, this issue, I mean, the policies that we're trying to affect can be fought on all different levels. In some ways, some of the municipal and city and community changes probably have more, or certainly as much, if not more weight, as changes that could be made at the state or even the federal level, which is kind of the reverse of what I think people think when they think about policy. You assume that a federal change is going to affect everybody in the country, and you know, and that doing something, you know, we say think locally and act globally, but local change actually, in the case of people's lives and in particular access issues, is really where some of the most powerful change can be made. So I've been working, so for example, for the tampon tax stuff, I've been working with activists all around the country. And that's been part of how we've gotten to the result of 15 states taking it on this year. And sometimes it's just a simple question that they'll have, which is, you know, how can I elevate the dialogue in my community? Or do you have sample legislation that I can share with my legislator? In fact, I've had legislators themselves talk about how important it is to have the media and public discourse and public opinion on their side, especially, you know, here in New York City. It's one thing where getting sort of the public dialogue elevated has been a slightly easier battle as compared to, say, in Wisconsin, where the legislator who took up the tampon tax there was really on the receiving end of a lot of vitriol from opponents. So through these connections, I was able to do op-ed writing. In fact, for the legislator in Wisconsin, I introduced her to Danielle, and Cosmo did a fabulous article on the work she was doing. And having that sort of national supportive media for her work made a really big difference. One, in her, you know, in just her confidence and her willingness to keep pushing through in the face of adversity. And two, also helps to shift the tide. And again, all of this activism, sort of the intersection of national level discussion, but local level action and activity, has been confluence of, you know, textbook smart, good activism. And I think that the results that we've had in such a short time speak for themselves. And in the tampon tax in particular, if you go back 2 years from now, 2 years ago from now, you know, there might have been a reference to it here or there, and there could have been sort of a local op-ed or things like that. And even as really smart petition like Helen's and Rachel's were being forged, without sort of that national level acceptance or willingness to take on this issue, it's really hard to see action and to get buy-in. But no sooner did California, for example, which was in fact to introduce tampon tax legislation in 2016, no doubt part of the efforts of Helen and Rachel, that they had assembly members, you know, ready to go in action in early 2016. President Obama was asked about it just a week or so later. You know, and if folks remember when the question was raised to him on YouTube, he had incredibly smart, insightful things to say, which is, well, I guess that's kind of what happens when women aren't at the decision-making table. But over the months that have followed, again, not only have elevated this issue, and 3 passed it, California passed it too. Governor Brown didn't do us any favors with his veto. The AMA, the American Medical Association, has issued a statement supporting legislation to eliminate the tampon tax. The dean of UC Irvine Law School and a constitutional scholar wrote an op-ed supporting efforts to eliminate the tampon tax. We've had incredible buy-in. We've had New York Times editorials. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of media hits on it. It's an issue that's exploded. But what's exciting about it is there's something every level can do about it.
Absolutely. I'm so interested and excited to hear these examples of online activism inspiring legislators to get in contact with folks. And I'm going to turn to Rachel and Helen now. I know that you've worked with an assembly member among other legislators. Can you tell us what that's been like and how that sort of propelled your campaign forward?
Absolutely. Working with Assemblywoman Garcia has been nothing short of amazing. Her staff is so passionate and have been so supportive. And because of Assemblywoman Garcia and Assemblywoman Lin Chang, we were able to meet some of the most amazing people we've actually met to date, right? And we're actually working with Assemblywoman Lin Chang to co-write an op-ed, right? And basically, there's been a lot of twists and turns, and it's been quite an adventure, but it's nothing I want to do all over again because it's been so exciting. Right, and with an adventure, there are different roadblocks that you can't foresee, and one of them was the governor's veto. And at that same day, we were on a train to Sacramento, and he had just vetoed that bill as soon as we stepped off the train. So right. I remember you were there with us, Juliana, and we had to really switch our course of action and completely change our strategy. And I think part of being on this activist road is to always be consistently thinking on your feet and thinking about what your next course of action is and how you're going to be making the most amount of impact. And honestly, working with these amazing and really passionate and working side by side, especially at the Capitol, was such an amazing opportunity that we just, we were so excited to be a part of. Yeah, and regardless of the veto, we feel like all the victories and the milestones that we've hit along the way, it can't be shattered with just one veto. So we feel like all the amount of stride that we've made, it's been wonderful to be on this road, regardless of the uncertainties. And I think it means so much more that after his veto, that if we can still keep standing up and keep fighting for what we believe is right, I think that would say even more than what would have been after, say, he had just signed the bill into law. I think it means so much more persistence to keep pushing after the veto happened. Right, and we are inspiring our communities to keep standing up for what you believe in and keep inspiring others to do the same by creating dialogue, by being on channels such as Nowadays and Teen Vogue. It's been awesome to get that kind of recognition and have that platform. And being so young, I think the most important part is that a lot of youth, especially in America, are told not to talk about such taboo issues and things that are, things that are normally not spoken about. And I think we really, really push the boundaries and the barriers of how young you can be to start talking about these issues and start taking action. Right. Seeing yourself struggle and seeing each other struggle and pushing ourselves out of these certain conflicts that we've had with how things are going in the certain roadblocks. It's been amazing and inspiring to ourselves to see that we can push on and we can still take action for things that we really truly do believe in. And of course, lastly, again, as discourse is important and dialogue is even more important, I think it's the youth today start talking about these issues, because ultimately it is the policymakers that do make the decisions, but it's on behalf of America's youth and everyone, right? So it's been amazing being a role model for young adults to start talking about issues like this. And taking action.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect segue. I'd love to tie up our conversation by turning it to Danielle. I've heard Jennifer, Rachel, and Helen all touch on this. I'll touch on using media as a tool, whether through op-eds, whether through coverage. Cosmo's done a really incredible sort of service here. We're working as a partner, and I'm curious if you have gained any insights to how publications and the media can support movements like these.
I think it's hard for us sometimes because what we have to do every single time is find a new angle and a new way in, because we don't want our readers to feel that they're hearing the same story over and over, but we also don't want to let the conversation die so that it's just like, oh, that tampon tax thing was last year, you know, I'm going to move on to this other thing now, or, oh, I guess it all got taken care of because I haven't heard about it in a while. So we do have a big piece coming out in our December 2016 issue. I encourage everyone to pick that up. It'll be on the newsstands next month, for which Jennifer was a great source. It was written by my colleague, Sarah Austin, about a lot of the great progress that's been made in the menstrual equity march over the last year, and especially the tampon tax. So, you know, we try to kind of do these pieces and really in the magazine where our space is so limited, you know, every so often, every 6 months or every year or something, just to keep that conversation going. And I think what's great is if people tap into the web that is, you know, has so much more they have such a greater need for coverage constantly, and they have greater turnover sort of amongst their readers. Their memory, I think, is a bit shorter. And then you can also cover a lot of local things. You know, think about what your local newspaper's website, you know, if you're trying to work on something in your state capital, like what's the paper there? What's their website? I think that's a good place. I think social media is a great place. We can tell the story in a lot of different ways there, whether it's, you know, we tried to do a social media campaign last year where people were, you know, holding up their tampons and saying that they were fighting against the tampon tax and encouraging other women to do so that way too. So I think that you have to think about all the various channels. You know, is it something like this? Is it a panel that then goes live, and how can you promote that? But I do think that it's important as journalists just to continue thinking about what are the new aspects of the stories. How can we continue to get our girls excited about this? You know, sometimes, as Helen and Rachel were saying, those setbacks can be benefits because this reignites people's passions about it. You can, you know, then they read an article about that roadblock of the veto and they can say, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, our assembly passed this and then our governor vetoed it. And that's an opportunity for a journalist in California to write something again and get people more energized. You know, we've tried to cover with our website some of the various legislators that are working. You know, we covered Councilwoman Freres's new policy she got passed here in the city. So I think it's just looking at each different aspect of what you are being an activist for and thinking, is there a new story here? Can we tell someone's personal story? You know, can we talk directly about the women affected? Those are always, I think, really powerful stories that people like to read. And I think, yeah, just to keep the conversation going so that it doesn't become stigmatized again. You know, the more that we talk about these topics, the less and less stigma there is. And then the more change that can happen because it won't be just a woman's issue that the men in Congress don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's so right. And, you know, as a campaigner sort of watching this happen, by it being propelled by incredible activists, I think that is really sort of the beauty of this movement, that there's been so many different stories told from so many different angles that it really helps propel this issue forward in a way that might be tough sometimes in the press, and has allowed the press and media to be a really huge asset. So it's just been so exciting to watch. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic conversation. I feel a lot of hope moving forward for the movement to end the tampon tax. And I know that, you know, as we've talked about before, we've had some setbacks, but there's really been a lot of victories, and I'm just so thrilled to be contributing to that conversation. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and excited to getting this conversation out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.